She stopped waiting to be chosen. The first thing Lena noticed about her new apartment was the silence. Not the peaceful kind they sell you in candle commercials. Not the soft, healing kind that comes with clean sheets and a warm mug, and the belief that you're finally safe. This silence had edges. It pressed against the walls like it was looking for weak spots. It filled the rooms the way cold air finds the gap under a door. It made every small sound, her keys hitting the counter, the fridge motor turning on, the distant elevator groaning, feel like it was happening inside her chest. She stood in the entryway with a single box in her arms and watched dust float in a stripe of late afternoon sunlight. The living room had a window too big for the space, like the building had been designed by someone who believed in fresh starts. On the floor were the outlines of where the previous tenants' furniture had been, pale rectangles on darker wood, like ghosts of a life that had existed right here and then moved on without asking permission. Lena set the box down and let her shoulders drop. Her body had been holding itself up for weeks, like if she relaxed too much, she might fall straight through the floor. She turned to the mirror by the door, a narrow, slightly warped thing someone had screwed into the wall years ago, and looked at herself like she was meeting a stranger. 41. Not old, but no longer able to pretend the years didn't count. Hair pulled into a low, tired knot. Mascara from yesterday she hadn't washed off because she'd been too exhausted to care. A mouth that had learned how to smile politely through disappointment. She studied her own eyes and felt that familiar sting, the one that wasn't exactly sadness and wasn't exactly anger either. It was something like grief, but for a version of herself that had believed love would save her. Hey. She said out loud because if she didn't speak, the silence would swallow her whole. Okay, Lena. Her voice echoed just enough to make her flinch. This is it, she thought. This is the part where you build something. This is the part where you stop waiting. She didn't say the rest. She didn't say, stop waiting to be chosen, because the words still felt too sharp in her mouth, like admitting them would slice something open that she'd spent years carefully stitching shut. She walked deeper into the apartment. The living room smelled like fresh paint and old building. She went into the kitchen, small but clean, with cabinets that had been white once, then yellowed, then painted white again to hide the yellow. The sink faucet had a slow drip. Sounded like a clock. She opened the box she'd brought in. Miscellaneous survival items, paper towels, a mug, a tiny Bluetooth speaker, a bottle of dish soap, a trash bag, a pack of crackers she'd thrown in that morning because she couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten, something that wasn't eaten in a hurry. The mug was the first thing she put away. It was a cheap mug that said, "You've got this," in gold letters. She stared at it in her hand and felt something inside her twist, almost like laughter, but not quite. "You've got this," she repeated, and the words sounded ridiculous in this empty room with boxes still in the hallway and a new key that didn't yet feel like it belonged to her. She put the mug in the cabin anyway, like placing it there could make the statement true through repetition. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her friend Tasha. "You moved in? Send pics. I'm so proud of you." Lena held the phone for a second, staring at the little blue bubble like it was a lifeline. She didn't respond right away. Pride felt like something meant for other people. People who did brave things without dissolving inside. People who packed up their lives and moved on without crying in the car afterward. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. People moved below like they had somewhere to be. A woman pushed a stroller. A man walked a dog that tugged at the leash like it had opinions. A couple laughed as they crossed at the light, close enough that their shoulders touched. Her throat tightened. Somewhere in her mind, without permission, a memory rose up like a tide. A different window, a different apartment, her old kitchen. Her husband, Mark, standing in the doorway with his tie loosened and his face carved from frustration. "You always make everything so heavy," he'd said. Lena could still hear the tone more clearly than she wanted to. Not yelling, not cruel in the obvious way, just tired, like she was an inconvenience he'd been trying to carry, and finally decided to set down. "I'm just asking you to talk to me," she'd said back then, her voice quiet because she'd learned that loudness made men shut down faster. He'd laughed, just once. Not because it was funny, because he didn't know what else to do. "We talk," he'd said. You want a movie. You want some dramatic, emotional thing. I don't live like that." And what Lena had wanted to say was, "I'm not asking for a movie, I'm asking for my life." But she hadn't. She'd swallowed it. She'd always been good at swallowing. The memory dissolved as quickly as it came, leaving her with the same ache it always left behind. The sense that she'd spent years auditioning for a role she'd never actually been cast in. She turned away from the window and went back to unpacking. She unpacked slowly, placing items with too much care, like she was trying to prove to herself that this wasn't temporary. She lined up plates in the cabinet. She placed her one framed photo on the counter. A picture of her at 19, sitting on the hood of a car, hair wild, smile wide, eyes bright with the kind of hope that felt almost embarrassing now. She'd found the photo in a box while packing and stared at it for a long time, wondering when exactly she'd lost that girl. Not the youth, not the smooth skin, not the metabolism, the belief, the unguarded assumption that love would be kind. She set the photo near the window so it could catch the light, a small altar to her former self. Then she sat down on the floor, back against the wall, and let the silence settle over her again. The first night in a new place always carried a strange energy. The walls hadn't learned you yet. The air didn't know your habits. You felt like you were visiting your own life. Lena pulled her knees to her chest and hugged them. The floor was cold through her jeans. "I did it," she whispered. The words didn't come with fireworks, no triumphant swelling music, just a quiet, shaky breath. She had left, not in the dramatic way people post online. She hadn't slammed doors or thrown plates. She hadn't shown up at a friend's house with tear-streaked cheeks and a suitcase and a speech about self-love. She'd left in pieces, a year of therapy, 6 months of sleeping in the guest room, 3 conversations with Mark that went nowhere. 100 tiny moments where she realized she was lonely even in the same bed. A slow, steady acceptance that she couldn't keep trading her heart for stability. By the time she signed the lease, the divorce papers were almost a formality. Mark had been calm about it. That was the thing that hurt the most. His calmness, his lack of fight, as if her leaving was a mild inconvenience, like a change in the cable plan. When she told him she'd found an apartment, he just nodded. "Okay," he'd said. "Do you need help moving?" She'd wanted him to beg just once, not even because she wanted to stay, because she wanted proof she had mattered. But he hadn't, and the ache of that had followed her like a shadow. That night she made herself a plate of crackers and cheese. She ate standing up because she didn't have a table yet. She played music from her tiny speaker, soft soul, the kind with a steady beat that made you feel like you weren't alone even when you were. Then she took a shower. The shower water was too hot at first. She adjusted it until it was warm enough to loosen the knot in her shoulders. She leaned her forehead against the tile and let the water run over her hair. And then, as if her body had been waiting for the right moment, she cried. Not pretty crying, not cinematic, ugly crying, silent at first, then shaking, tears mixing with water so she couldn't tell which was which. She cried for the marriage, not because she wanted it back, but because it had been a whole era of her life, and now it was a closed door. She cried for the nights she'd pretended she was fine. She cried for the way she'd folded herself smaller so Mark wouldn't feel overwhelmed by her needs. She cried for how long she'd confused patience with self-abandonment. She cried for the version of herself who thought being easy to love was the same as being loved. When she finally turned off the water, she stood dripping in the steam and looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "You're okay," she told herself. Her voice was hoarse. The words weren't convincing, but she said them anyway. She wrapped herself in a towel and went to the bedroom, where a mattress lay on the floor like a temporary solution that might become permanent if she didn't keep moving. She crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling. She expected to feel relief. Instead, she felt emptiness, a quiet kind of panic, like she'd stepped off a cliff and was waiting to feel the ground. She reached for her phone and opened Instagram without thinking. Scrolled through smiling faces, couples on vacations, engagement rings, babies in matching pajamas. She stopped at a photo of her friend Jenna and her husband both holding wine glasses, captioned, "Date night with my forever." Lena stared at the word forever until it blurred. A thought surfaced, cruel and familiar. Maybe you missed it. Maybe you missed your chance. Maybe this is what happens when you're too much, too sensitive, too deep, too you. She locked her phone and tossed it onto the pillow. No, she whispered into the dark. No, she didn't know what she was saying no to exactly. The thought, the fear, the old story, but she knew she had to refuse it, because if she didn't, it would wrap around her like vines and she'd wake up 5 years from now still waiting for someone to prove she was worth loving. She rolled onto her side and closed her eyes. In the darkness, she could hear the faucet drip. 1, 2, 3, a clock counting down a life she didn't want anymore. The next morning, she woke up too early, like her body didn't trust rest yet. Sunlight spilled onto the bedroom floor in a bright square. Dust sparkled in it like tiny floating stars. She lay still for a moment and listened. Silence again. But this time, it didn't feel quite as sharp. It felt like possibility, like a blank page. She got up and made coffee. The coffee maker was cheap, borrowed from her sister until she bought her own. The smell filled the kitchen like comfort. She held the warm mug between her hands, breathing in. On instinct, she reached for her phone again. A text from Mark sat unread. "Did you get settled? Let me know if you need anything." She stared at it, feeling nothing and everything. The old Lena would have replied politely. Would have said, "Thanks, I'm fine." Would have added a smiley face to soften the edges. Would have made sure she didn't seem bitter or needy or, God forbid, emotional. She held the phone for a long second. Then she typed, "I'm settled. Please only text if it's about the divorce paperwork." She stared at the message. Her finger hovered. A pulse of fear ran through her like she'd stepped onto thin ice. Because setting boundaries always felt like she was doing something wrong. Then she hit send. The message whooshed away. Her heart pounded like she just jumped out of a plane. She waited for the guilt to consume her. It didn't. Not completely. There was guilt, yes, a little familiar ache in her ribs, but there was also something else, a quiet, unexpected pride. She'd chosen herself. A small choice, but it was hers. That afternoon she went to Target because that's what Americans did when they needed to pretend their life wasn't falling apart. They bought neutral-toned throw pillows and called it healing. The store was bright and loud and full of people doing normal things, choosing cereal, debating curtain lengths, arguing softly about what kind of detergent to buy. Lena wandered through aisles like she was observing humanity from a distance. She found herself in the home section, touching blankets she didn't need just for the texture of softness under her fingers. A young couple stood near the lamps, laughing. "You always want the expensive one," the guy teased. "Because I have taste," the woman shot back. He leaned in and kissed her cheek like it was nothing. Like affection was just a normal part of living. Lena turned away too quickly, her throat tightening again. She didn't want to envy them. She didn't want to be the bitter, divorced woman in aisle 12 staring at strangers like they were evidence of a life she'd failed at. But there it was, a heavy, quiet jealousy. Not just of the couple, but of the ease, of being chosen without having to perform. She pushed her cart toward the candles, because candles were neutral. Candles didn't trigger grief. She picked one up and smelled it. Fresh linen. She snorted softly, of course. A woman beside her, maybe in her late 60s, hair silver and perfectly styled, smiled. "Good choice," the woman said. "Smells like you've got your life together." Lena surprised herself by laughing. "I'm trying," she admitted. The woman's eyes softened, like she recognized the lie people told themselves just to keep going. "Aren't we all?" she said. Lena looked at her cart. A few basic things, plates, a set of towels, a small plant she'd picked up because she wanted something alive in her apartment. The woman nodded toward the plant. "That one needs sunlight," she said, "but it's hardy. It'll survive if you forget for a day or two." Lena held the plant like it was fragile. "I forget a lot lately," she confessed. The woman studied her for a moment, then said something that hit Lena like a quiet truth dressed as casual conversation. Hardy doesn't mean you don't need care, the woman said. It just means you won't die from neglect as fast as other things. Lena's chest tightened. She wanted to tell this stranger everything. How she'd been hardy her whole life, how people always praised her strength, her resilience, her ability to handle it, how no one ever asked if she was tired of handling it. Instead, she just nodded, swallowing. "Thank you," she said. The woman patted her arm gently, then walked away with her own cart full of ordinary things. Lena stood there staring after her, feeling like the universe had just slipped her a note. Hardy doesn't mean you don't need care. She put the candle in her cart. Weeks passed like that, small choices, small steps. She built her apartment slowly like a nest. A second-hand couch from Facebook Marketplace, a rug she chose even though it was bold, even though she worried it was too much. She bought art prints for the walls, soft abstract colors that made her feel calm. She bought a bookshelf even though she didn't read as much as she used to, because she wanted to become the kind of person who read again. She learned the building sounds, the neighbor upstairs who played music on Saturday mornings, the elevator that groaned like a tired animal, the occasional laugh from the hallway. She got used to waking up alone. At first, the loneliness felt like a punishment. Then it started to feel like space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to hear her own needs without them getting drowned out by someone else's moods. Therapy helped, not because it fixed her like a broken object, but because it gave her language. Her therapist, Dr. Patel, had a calm voice and a way of listening that made Lena feel like she wasn't too much. One day, after Lena described yet another moment where she'd felt guilty for setting a boundary, Dr. Patel leaned forward and asked gently, "Who taught you that your needs are an inconvenience?" Lena's throat went tight. She tried to answer quickly, to make it intellectual, to keep it safe. But the truth came out anyway. "My mom," she whispered. She saw it instantly, her mother's face, stressed and tired, telling young Lena to stop crying because we don't have time for that. Lena had learned early that emotions were a problem to solve, not something to hold, so she solved herself into silence. Dr. Patel nodded like she'd been waiting for that, and now she said, "When you have needs, it feels dangerous, because your body remembers what happened when you had needs as a child." Lena stared at her hands. "What happened?" Dr. Patel asked softly. Lena swallowed. "I got dismissed," she said. "Or I got told I was dramatic. Or I got left alone until I calmed down." Dr. Patel's eyes softened. "So your nervous system learned, if I need, I lose connection." Lena's eyes burned. "Yes," she breathed. "That's it." Dr. Patel sat back. "And that's why you learn to be easy to love," she said, "because easy feels safe." The words landed like something cracking open. Lena left that session and sat in her car in the parking lot, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Easy feels safe, but safe had almost killed her spirit. She realized then, sitting in that car, that her whole life had been shaped by avoiding abandonment, by staying small so no one would leave, by accepting crumbs because she was terrified of hunger. She'd built a life around not being too much, and she was exhausted. That night she went home and made a list on a notepad. Not a to-do list, not a grocery list, a want list. She stared at the blank page like it was illegal. She wrote, "Slowly, I want to feel peace in my body. I want to laugh more. I want to take myself out on dates. I want a life that feels full even without a partner. I want love, but I don't want to chase it. I want to stop apologizing for existing." She read the list and felt a strange tenderness toward herself, like she was finally meeting the woman inside her. Then came the date. It happened because her friend Tasha wouldn't stop insisting. "One date," Tasha said over brunch. stabbing her pancake like it had personally offended her. Just one. You don't have to marry him, just go. Put on lipstick. Remember, you're hot. Lena laughed despite herself. I'm not hot, she argued. Tasha leaned forward, eyes fierce. Stop it, she said. Stop talking about yourself like you're expired milk. You're not old, you're not broken, you're not some before and after picture. You're a whole woman. Lena stirred her coffee, not looking up. Dating sounds exhausting, she admitted. I don't want to. You don't have to do anything you don't want, Tasha said, softer now. But I think you're afraid, and I get it, but I also think you deserve fun. At least fun. Fun. The word felt unfamiliar in Lena's mouth. Still, a week later, she found herself sitting at a small wine bar downtown across from a man named Eric who wore a button-down shirt and smiled like he'd practiced it in the mirror. Eric was attractive in an ordinary way, nice hair, clean shoes, the kind of man who looked like he owned a grill. They talked about work, about travel, about favorite restaurants, about the city. Lena tried to relax into it. Then Eric leaned back, looked her over in a way that wasn't subtle, and said with a grin, "So, how long you been divorced?" Lena blinked. She said, "I'm in the middle of it." Eric nodded like she'd just confirmed a fun fact. "Nice," he said. "So you're like, free now?"